So I'm trying to get them as close together as possible. But hello, everyone. I'm Kyler Cheatham from The Confluential. Welcome to our live today. It's kind of cool. We're doing it on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram over here, and then TikTok over here. So we're talking about, is SaaS a scam, or how do you make sure you're not scammed by SaaS? So if you're joining us on YouTube or LinkedIn, welcome. If you're joining us on TikTok, welcome. We're excited to have you. Hi, guys. Excited to be here. So today, the point of this discussion, oh, LinkedIn is here. I'll put pants on. Thank you, TikTok audience. They have to behave if LinkedIn is here. So I'm excited for you all to have this conversation, especially kind of bringing these two audiences together. The big conversation here is, how are we making sure we don't get scammed by SaaS? And making sure that when we sign contracts, whether it be AI-based hybrid contracts, ERP, CRM, all of these different pieces, that we're able to understand what should we be looking for, and is this the right fit for us? I think we saw in the last 5-10 years really the industry move to SaaS, and now we're kind of asking, was that the right choice? Like, do we need that as well? So let's just make sure everything, let's see, SaaS can fully exploit without clear upfront cost controls. Full ownership can as well, though. Absolutely. I'm just letting my team know I'm on TikTok live as well, because I always just love to surprise them, and they just so appreciate me when this is why, I'm not the CEO of the company. I just, you don't have to depend on tech to survive. Absolutely. And I think there's also something to be said for legacy tech as well when you go into these types of conversations. So the first thing we want to break down is, like, what is SaaS, right? So software as a service. And that basically means that you're renting somebody else's software. And that is a big conversation that you need to be just eyes wide open on, right? If we don't own the software, right? Like we did with on-prem, we used to go in, own licenses, we were responsible for the hardware. And then we kind of moved into an industry where now we're renting and kind of at the mercy of somebody else's business. So I'm just going to use this as an example. But so because open source the world, right? Okay. Yeah. So when we look at what SaaS means for the business, right? I think it's a big understanding of what does that mean for your business. And that's really what you have to keep in mind on these types of conversations, is what do you need, not what does somebody want you to buy, right? And that's kind of the hard piece of this. And what do those contracts actually look like? Is it going to be a situation in which that you are going to be taken advantage of, or did you do your due diligence on buying something? So if you're going from ECC to S4HANA, right? We've got a lot of clients right now that are on Rise and doing all of those different things. So when we look at going from a legacy vendor to a legacy vendor, but we're moving to more of a SaaS-based system like S4HANA, right? I think it's going to be a big conversation of what does that contract look like, and how do we ensure that we're not paying these wild maintenance fees? And that's a lot of what we do, is come in and make sure that, when we are actually hearing from vendors that they're charging us X, Y, and Z, does that actually make sense? And is that benefiting the business? So let's look at some of these amazing comments here. So vendor lock-in still occurs with full owned model. I could completely agree with that. We had a TikTok live yesterday, which if you're not on our lives on TikTok, I totally invite you to be. It's very fun, especially yesterday's. So the big piece of that is, even if you're building your own model, you're still utilizing other people's tools. And so there has to be a level of, like, you being okay with that, but understanding that there needs to be a massive amount of governance, and that needs to be an internal competency that you build and host on. If you don't like SaaS, you support AI, since all the SaaS can be built with just a few prompts. And that's kind of what we're looking at right now, is, hey, we not only are not sure about what our architecture will look like, but we have all of these people saying, like, you can just vibe code, or you can just, build your own SaaS, which is technically true, right? There is technical capabilities out there, but that's totally going to depend on the level of your organization and being able to understand what that looks like for you, right? It takes a very mature IT team to be able to hone that. Okay, TikTok chat members, we need to show LinkedIn why we're a better audience. I love that. The LinkedIn live isn't loading. I'm sorry about that, guys. I hope YouTube is working. LinkedIn, I probably, because I was talking smack about them on TikTok yesterday, they like blocked me. But let's see. My friend Gianni is a huge fan of yours. Hi, Gianni. It's so weird. Which SaaS vendors do you think will collapse or die? I think when we look at big tier one SaaS, I think that what we're seeing now, especially with like watching the stock market and SaaS apocalypse or whatever you want to call it, some of the bigger vendors that are going to their tier one vendors, I think are really going to be challenged by this whole we're blocking your data so you can't use anything else. Like we're locking you in to a total architecture. And that would be like an SAP, that would be like a Salesforce. I think Workday does a little bit of that, right? But we even see like multiple global lawsuits around SAP blocking data so you can't use other tools. I think there's a lot of pressure to not do that anymore. I know 2 days in a row. I had to bring you guys into the LinkedIn Live, which I hear is not loading. So, it is what it is because I just had to entertain myself. If you are on, I don't think you guys can see it on TikTok, but we have got a visitor, the puppy. She's here. She wants to talk a lot about, she's very passionate about not getting scammed by SaaS, right? So I know, I just missed you guys so much. SAP is blocking your system development as it doesn't fit their agenda. And that's so true, right? And that's something a lot of times my colleagues are like, oh, okay, Kyler's on her hopes and dreams as well. But it really is going to be something that I feel like is fundamentally going to change about just the absolute power grab. It reminds me kind of telecom, right? Do you remember when we were YouTube is working. Good to know. Yeah, absolutely. It reminds me kind of like, remember when you used to have to be like locked in to like a cable contract? I know I'm really dating myself, or a phone contract, which is still kind of a true thing with Verizon, T-Mobile, and AT&T. But there's still, different opportunities for people to not be locked in. It reminds me of kind of that, but like in a more of a business sense. The challenge with that is SAP controls over 60% of the world's transactions. So their power grab is not going away. It's more of like, are they going to meet it? Are the customers going to be loud enough on that level and be powerful enough to do that? And the same with big consulting, right? So anything above $20 a month, I think people will go out and make an app if they are overpaying. I think that's so true, especially for smaller to medium-sized businesses, right? But again, we've got to know how that works for like an actual legit industry. Like, I work very much in heavily regulated industries, and that is never going to work for them, right? Because if you make plane wings for Boeing, you need to follow Boeing's security and compliance, right? They're going to have a say contractually if you're their supplier, right? What you're able to utilize for systems. And I can promise you, it's not, something that's going to be $200 to $20 a month. So let's see. You can't vibe code your way to compliance at a medium to large organization. I agree. And then also like understanding what it's like to get software out of a medium organization. We service industries that are over $1 billion. And I think that's just a huge piece that they're never going to be able to do. The massive amount of resources that they would lose, all of those different things. So LinkedIn is the Temu Sam's Choice Coca-Cola of social media. I know, I probably they will block me again for saying this, but I'm in their like creators network, if that's even a thing. And when we go through like our training, I'm like, are you guys serious? Is this real? Because this is not it. But we got to do business things to do business. Bring in a little SAP, bring in little SAP, adorable dog's name, right? Her name is Brookie after Brook Trout. So we're big Fisher people over here. So this kind of thing just frustrates me. I'm so sorry. I can't believe the cat's name is Deloitte. I love your subjects. We should really connect outside of the live. Would love that. And I will be on AI over lunch this live next week. So I would love for you guys to join us in talking about that. Let's see. Um, 3 tactics for avoiding getting scammed, and what's the biggest scam going on in SaaS today? Good question. I love this. And I see what vendors are best known for scamming on YouTube. So thank you guys for following me on YouTube. It's you can find it just my name. We're trying to use that channel as well. So I appreciate the help in getting us our message out on that side. So I think the three biggest tactics avoid forgetting scam. One is know what you need, not what your competitor is doing, not what somebody said on stage that's probably not even true at an industry conference. What do you need? And the only people that are going to know that is your front end users, right? The people that are actually utilizing the technology. Some of my favorite workshops to sit in on are it's like, okay, what do you really do? And the production manager kind of lays out this heavily process and what they need as far as technology. And then the person that we actually want to talk to, the frontline worker was like, yeah, we haven't done that, Richard, in 3 years, because we can't get product out the door with that process. It would take us 3 times as long. And then you would yell at us because we can't, get that process done. So I'd say the one thing you have to know is your own requirements, not what a vendor made for you, not what ChatGPT told you. What are your requirements? And stay true to those. In the demos is the second part, right? When you are looking at a new system, even when you're looking at your legacy system and upgrading to a new license, a new version, whatever, even annual agreements. In the demos, right? We want to be able to say, what are am I going to see in my environment on my version? If they're not showing you that, I think it's a huge red flag, right? If they are unable to show you what this will look like for you and solve your problems, that is a huge issue, right? There's no reason that they can't do that. If we can vibe code an ERP system or build it in Claude code and all those different things, you can for sure show me, for a day what your system is going to do in my system, right? For the most part. So I would say that's a big piece. Going in with demo scripts, that's a lot of times what we do, because people are like, well, I thought they were just going to show me your software. It's like, no, that's a chance for them to sell you more things that you don't need and lock you into contracts that in 5 years, you'll be calling me back up to be like, oh my God, how are we doing that? How are we paying this much money, right? So that's a huge piece, is demo scripts. And then the third piece about that is your contracts should be like, this is a war. I'm so dead serious, because it is that big of a deal. We see people every day call us and be like, I don't know what we signed. I don't know what's going on. I thought this was just a regular agreement. You must have a SaaS specialist look at your contracts, right? Even internal legal counsel, right, hires us for these types of conversations, because they're like nothing you've ever seen. And if you sign it, especially with AI being layered in there, you're playing for, 20 different agents that, you're not using, right? So that's the biggest piece of that. So let's see. Always easier said than done. Absolutely. I think some expectations for vibe coding for the right application may not be org wide. And then I don't know why I have to say this so much. Vibe coding in the business is not going into production, right? IT needs to oversee that and make sure that they're not just dropping weird shit out there. And then they call IT and be like, excuse me, can you fix this? And it's like, no, I cannot fix that. Let's see. AI model creation is not feasible for small businesses, not without a platform, right? They need their own model. I wonder how many firms you are talking about that have these vendor problems. I mean, all of ours do, because that's all we do, right? Is project restoration or making sure we set this up. Same issue I'm having a supply chain. Same issue I'm having in a supply chain project. What senior management is saying is different from front end users, right? And I think they're only going to believe that when you show them that, right? So many times, like I've been in workshops where it's like, Okay, what do you do? Well, we have to take this report. It takes us like 8 hours to format it into the format that accounting needs. And accounting is sitting in there being like, wait a minute, it takes you 8 hours to format that. It takes us 8 hours to unformat that because that's not how we need it. And it's like, clearly we've never discussed this before, right? So we need to be able to understand what that looks like. Um, all SaaS relies on database, CPU compute. Let's see. Like 100,000 firms in the US might be worth 2 mil to 1 bill. What do you mean about that? Like, oh, like for the firms that we service. So we service over $1 billion, right? Is typically the person that we're talking to because we need the most complex manufacturing. That's just the boutique where we are. Um, so what are your thoughts on, is it, I've never heard of that system. Tell me how to pronounce it, and I can. I think it's Dassault Systems. Never heard of it. But if anyone else has, that happens all the time, right? Like I can't know every SaaS system, and I just say I don't know it. What I do after is go ask some of our delivery teams. If you give me, especially like, what does it do? I'll come back. Just like yesterday, someone had a question for me that I didn't know the answer to, and then I just DM after them. Who's the SaaS goat? Oh my gosh, it totally depends, right? It totally depends on what you need. So I can't even answer that question because it would be like saying, oh, I'm trying to think of something like, you know, what's the best medication for you, right? Like, I don't know. How tall are you? How big are you? What's your problem? All of those different things. Like, what's the best medication in the world, right? I think it's a question that's like, who's going to be your best partner in this? And you guys are smart enough to figuring that out. Training an AI model costs a minimum of 1,000 a month. Simply running an AI model, a GPU costs 250 a month. I totally agree with that. I think that's definitely something that we need to talk about in that. So yeah, for sure. I'll definitely get you more on that as well. So it depends on the quality tier of GPU and whether you're renting or buying and the actual GPU. And that's so true, right? And I think a lot of people really understand that or really don't understand that. Hi, glad you guys are here. Just as a reminder, we're on YouTube over here. We're on TikTok over here. We're supposed to be on LinkedIn over here, but it's not working. Shocker. So we will restream it on, if you're watching on YouTube and you want to see it on LinkedIn, we'll try and push it again this afternoon. Sometimes that happens and it just breaks. Different question. What SaaS company stands out as companies should know about? I mean, again, it's hard for me to answer that question because of where I work. So you have to remember, like, I'm in heavy industry, metals, mining, biopharma, the most complex manufacturing that you can potentially get, heavily regulated. So we have we've got a lot going on that level. I think if we were to talk about like who are some of the best partners, I'll just tell you who are implementing now because we've worked with that. IFS is a great one for us. We work with them on both the manufacturing execution side and the ERP side. I think they're still working on a lot of their like more ERP functionality that's not heavy manufacturing, but I think their team is great. Right? I think they're great listeners and they're great partners. It totally depends on the integrator, right? But I do think they have great tier 2 integrators that are local onshore to wherever you are in EMEA or in the North America, the US and Canada. So that's a good one. I think Infor is really great too. I think they do a really good job of meeting people where they need to be met. I think they're hard on like, so when you look at Infor versus Epicor, we always use Infor because a lot of times it is like recipe management, which we need in that functionality. And they do a really good job. Again, you got to watch that integrator. And that's really going to be the piece of all of these questions. You could buy the most amazing software on the planet. And if you have a really terrible partner as a system integrator, then it's often not the system, it's their integration, which is why, D365, I rarely say, right, quality of integrators matter on YouTube. I see you over here. Is like, because D365 is a really good software. It is, but their VAR network is so bad, right? So there's some that are very good. And when we have, like, we've got a great network of that, but it's going to depend on where you are in the world. If you're in Australia, probably not going to recommend D365 because there's not a great integration network over there. And you need that in order for it to be successful, because it's a new software and you're going to need that support, right? And so that's a big one. I would say I like Epicor. They went through some recent leadership changes, so I'm kind of still feeling them out. A lot of the long-term colleagues left, including their president, right? So, who, Lisa Pope, who was a woman, which is very rare in that place, but I think they do a good job. I think they sometimes their integrators are bad, but usually when we call corporate and be like, hey, you got to get this on going on, they can do it. SAP, again, I think SAP, if you're in an SAP house, you're going to, work with SAP people. And so that's just, you're going to be, it's going to be important that you vet those, right? So let's see, Coinbase for Business is necessary to exchange crypto for usable currency. There you go. I don't know anything about that, but thank you for that information. Really, honestly, because there's a lot of things that I don't know about that you guys do, right? Let's see. I think I saw one up here. So I bought two RX Pro 6000s for 8K each, and I'm pleased with the results. Good. I'm glad. Right? Thanks for the list. You bet. And I mean, there's other ones too. Like if you're in HCM, I think Workday's fine. I think they're getting a little too Salesforcey for me, where we got agents and everything, and then we're charging for those, and your customers don't know about that, which is extortion, right? So I think they need to kind of tighten that up a little bit. But they're good on that side. If you have a heavy human business, I think that, Oracle is rarely something I recommend, but if it's a good fit for you, it's a good fit for you. I think we see a lot of businesses come to us, especially that are right in like 500 million marker, and they think they need an Oracle or an SAP in order to grow into that $1 billion category. And I think it's no, you absolutely do not. You need the system that works best for you and that's not going to absolutely kill your either OPEX or CAPEX expenses. I don't know, right? So let's see. Anthropic and OpenAI are effectively monopolies for all intents and purposes as SaaS goes. I would agree with that, right? I think it would be a wild. We have been highly skilled in Workato integrations. I don't know what that is. Is it Workato? If you tell me what it is, I would love to know more about it. We can definitely look it up and drop some links here in the chat. Let's see. What differentiates a great integrator? And then we also have a question here on YouTube. What are the keys to vetting vendors? So I'm going to take those kind of in the same. So I think a lot of people misunderstand. So whenever we have a restoration project, right? When we're coming in for, some people call it remediation. I like the word restoration because it shows there's like light on the end of the tunnel. And sometimes it doesn't really seem like that for the client because they're, not able to do things like pay their people or send out only like $100,000 in invoices or something like that. Or not be able to like actually produce their product. And that doesn't feel like, it's very scary, right? So I think those pieces are going to be critical in looking at a restoration project. A lot of times when we come in, I would say 90% of the time, the issue is with the system integrator, right? You already bought the software. That is done, right? Like there's very few are going to rip that out and stop using it. That would be a huge, huge challenge. I did the U.S. Air Force case study on my channel on TikTok. It's also on YouTube if you want to look at it. And the biggest piece of that, they went through $1 billion implementation and never used the new software. And that, that obviously is a waste of huge taxpayer money. Birmingham City Council in the US or in the UK is going through that right now. They ripped out SAP. They're attempting to implement Oracle, and it's just not going well. So the issue is going to be 9 times out of 10 with the system integrator. And the system integrator, the issue with that a lot of times is they're the same people that sold you the software. So if you just take a step back from that, right? And you go to the grocery store and you buy an apple from someone who gets paid for selling you an apple as opposed to an orange, but yet is supposed to be the person there saying, hey, here's what's best for your body to eat, right? Well, obviously, that person is going to sell you the apple because they get paid for selling you the apple. And so that's why I never want you guys to buy software from the same person that implements it for you because it gets messy and weird. And were you given the right software? I don't know, right? I have no idea, right? But at this point, you bought the software. And so now we've got to look at the system integrator and they're plugging in. And a lot of people are like, I just don't know what they're doing, right? Like they must be doing something on the back end, but I don't know what they're doing. And again, take a step back. What business relationship do you have that you literally don't know what what you're paying them to do? None, right? You are paying them. You are the customer, right? So if you don't know what they're doing and 6 months down the road, you've seen zero deliverables and nothing works, that is not something you just need to push through, right? So when we go into these conversations, we need to ensure that we have a good partner. How do we do that? We vet them, right? Just like you would a supplier, just like you would any other thing. Stop thinking it's so complicated. You're smart enough to do this, right? If it feels too good to be true, their timeline and their cost, it is, right? Or get yourself an advocate that's going to sit on the same side as you at that table, being like, hey, this doesn't sound right. Show us what this looks like. The other thing I always want you to do when you're vetting integrators is make sure that you ask to speak to the delivery team, right? Because you're just speaking to the sales team and they're often going to give you some, bullshit excuse like, hey, we can't promise who's going to be on your project because of resources and timelines and our other clients. And it's like, it's weird because you just told me you were going to give me the A team to close this deal, but okay. And totally understand that. But I can talk to a director of delivery, right? Someone who's done this before. I need to make sure that's a fit for my team. So that's a big one. Let's see. This is back to the Worktato. It's been a boom in the US. It has been done magical turnarounds for firms that have a wide customer base, but in Canada, everyone is not into it at all. Interesting. I don't know anything about that, but I'll definitely message you. So let's see. My apples are GMO. They're good. They better be. Extra GMO for us. Thanks for the list. You betcha. It's what I'm here for. If someone found a way to decentralize GPU access, that would be goated. DigitalOcean is always sold out of them. Legacy Systems is an IBM model, slow money. Absolutely. It blows my mind that IBM does not even have their own search engine. There's lots of examples. Let's see. Google has one, Meta has one, Tesla owns one. We also have a problem right now with Ariba SAP consultants working remotely within different time zones. And that happens all the time, right? I just talked to someone who is having issues with the same exact thing. They're in a big financial firm and they can't figure out if that's like how it should be or it should not be. And I just want to remind you again, as a consultant that works globally, I'm up at 2 a.m. all the time for my APAC clients. They need to assimilate to your time zone, not you to theirs. Like that's so weird that they're not doing that. And maybe like, yeah, it's cheaper labor, all the things. IBM made a vibe coding tool named Bob. I mean, I think it's a good name. It's a good name, Let's see. So when we're looking at that, I just want to remind you guys that these people work for you, right? And you absolutely need to be able to understand that your team that's supporting you is going to be able to be when you need them, right? We can't be doing calls at 11 o'clock at night. I see this a lot with Infosys, all of those other pieces that happen where all of a sudden, like you're in the midst of an implementation and you're on the phone in the middle of the night and it's your business here domestically and you're trying to meet the time zone of all of these kind of like offshore developers. I'm not saying offshore is never an option. I'm just saying you need to have someone that manages the offshore team to meet the needs of your team, right? SaaS is a scam unless it's AI, then it's a tribute to the future ruling species. There you go. I think SaaS is absolutely a scam, right? And that's the biggest piece is like you have to know. If you're not talking, please mute. And um, I absolutely think that we need to be able to understand that we're renting a house here, right? So when you rent a house, that is absolutely going to be something that you need to look at when you manage to I can't, paint the walls. I can't, build knock down walls, right? Like I can't do all of these things without somebody else's approval. I mean, we have an implementation right now that's gotten in really a weird situation where the customer can no longer use the managed service provider that they've been using because the vendor, the actual system vendor, said they're not on our approved list anymore because they break the software, they do weird things in there, and it makes our system not function correctly. And that sucks for the customer, right? Because they've been in this relationship for so long that is absolutely a system in which they can't continue to use. Let's see. Let's see. Let's see. Love your eyebrows. Who's the biggest celebrity you've ever met? No idea. I don't think I've ever met a celebrity. Carol, that means you. Get off mute. We can't hear you. SaaS is not fully understood by software startups yet. What do you mean by that? So interested to hear. Um, Let's see. Oh, what did I miss? My mom has the green marker out. It's always the Sharpies with me, especially when my kids like they love to Sharpie everything in the summer and it's just whatever. I should show you the computer that they worked on yesterday. Vibe coding was unheard of when I was in college in 2015. I mean, same. I wasn't in college in 2015. I was much older than that, but have you noticed big SaaS platforms are freaking out about security? Yes, I think that is absolutely true. I think when it comes to security, and this is an interesting story I told you guys yesterday, right? ServiceNow had a breach. All my cybersecurity colleagues are like, never say the B word. They had an escape of data, right? Of information. And so one of their clients, one of their customers, added on a security layer to say, okay, well, obviously we can't trust ServiceNow, so we got to put this on. And ServiceNow was like, oh, to plug that in, it's going to be an additional $20,000. I'm like, what do you mean? It was your security lapse, not ours. And that is absolutely such a true thing. I think also in heavily regulated industries like I'm in, you've got to match the security level. And that's why we have, all of our, different security clearances and certifications and all those different things. Like we've got to bring someone in to certify in aerospace and defense because they've got to know that it's certified that that ecosystem is going to be safe enough for the supplier to, make rockets or whatever else. So it's a huge, huge piece. I think a big innovation in the SaaS world right now are local security agents that can be able to kind of like scan if there's any outbreaks. But you guys would know more about that than I. So SaaS is marriage, vibe coding is dating. Only one leads to divorce. That's beautiful. So poetic. My kids Sharpie the wall in the dining room. I'm keeping it until they're old enough to paint. I completely agree with you. Completely agree with you. Recommendations for small to medium businesses whose owner pushes improvements without IT involvement. Well, I would say a new owner would be the first thing thing that I would talk about, I mean, there can be no improvements without IT involvement on the technical side, or why do you even have an IT department? And I'm happy to send the owner a video if you want me to. But that aside, I would say, like, what's the improvements? Like, what are we trying to solve here? Um, and how do you make sure that you're, hitting that mark? And so if you give me more information there, I can give you a better recommendation. They don't freak out because of security. They freak out because of the lack of it. Amen. Or like they've probably been like skirting the edge of it for like a long time, being like, we don't need to invest in that yet. And like bubbling over, and then something happened. And they're like, oh man, we got to get in there. So let's see. A SaaS largely exists as public companies like Robinhood. Absolutely. Um, I'm a SaaS company that is small and privately owned in tech space. We love our SaaS model. Test ran an ERP for 1 year because it had a signature field that our current, I'm going to wait till that one comes. I'm something that happens. Exactly. The most successful SaaS startups either outperform public companies or they serve a low cost niche. I totally agree with that. Or vertical specific are a big one. At least in the evaluations that I do for venture capital, private equity, or grant funding, they have to have that ability to look at those types of different things. So I also think the low cost niche is challenging, right? Because you got to make money some way, right? It costs what it costs, but people don't really understand what that means. Our niche is a small county and cities COBOL replacements. I think that's so cool. I love that. I love that. So, okay, guys, I'm going to stay on for about 5 more minutes today because I was doing a shorter one for LinkedIn that doesn't work. But I have about 5 minutes. But I want to, just never once has it been described as cool. I think it's super cool. Did you see the video I tagged you in about the IT person? Sorry, I get so many notifications. I don't know if you do. But there's this joke about like, the only devs I want. Show us the junk food drawer. There is none. There is absolutely none. I will show you the computer though that we accidentally painted on yesterday. Beautiful, right? Beautiful. Quite sure that, yes, I saw the TISM post. I felt attacked. Quite sure that we got a little artsy, but I think the thesis, what I want you guys to take, I know it is what it is. To be fair, she was trying to draw on like a very light piece of paper and the paint marker went through it. So she didn't actually know that. She plays office under my desk when she's home. So, these years are fleeting. We'll never get them back. So one of a kind is right. So in this conversation, we need to know that we need to, one, know what we need. That's going to be like our battle war strategy. You need to know that. Can you have someone help you figure that out? For sure, right? Like we do that all the time. And that's how essentially you're going to stay protected by staying true to that. Second thing we're going to do, right, is make sure that we know what our demos are. The business never actually knows what it needs. I think if you get 50% there, right, you're going to eliminate so many different pieces and start with business case by business case, right? Like a quality management system. And that's a big conversation when it comes to what do you need. You have high goals at 50%. I know, very high standards. Start with each layer of the business, right? And gone are the days of kind of like these big ERP implementations, mostly because I think that, they're too expensive and they're too risky, right? And the architecture now, especially for larger complex industries, right? And they are absolutely going to be a different set of standards when it comes to our ability to absorb risk, right? So that's why I want you guys to remember is you got to know what you need for at least the most part. You at least have to have those conversations. Bring someone in to help you that's not going to make sure that you are, going to different vendors, right? Like if you're going to bring in a consultant to help you pick a system or evaluate that, you have to be 100% certain that they don't sell any systems, right? They don't get any cutbacks from that. You absolutely have to do that. Second is you have to know what you buy, and that starts with um, that starts with, sorry, these comments are killing me. It starts with the ability to, in the demos, see what you're buying, right? In the demos, you need to start that process and you need to be able to do that. I should be a plumber. The only rule shit rolls downhill. How hard could it be? Absolutely, right? No, we broke her. It's not you. It's these other ones. And I'm like, what are we talking about? Great work, everyone, right? Especially on LinkedIn. I'm sure when we stream this, it's not my usual polished self, which is totally fine. I think that's more authentic when we can have these types of conversations, which is the point of this channel, right? And on LinkedIn as well, to be able to understand like what are we actually working with and what are we actually buying. Third thing I want you to take away, right, is contracts, 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 contracts. TikTok is basically cousin Eddie chat, right? Exactly. Exactly. We all should just join in our bathrobes, right? In our like hats that cousin Eddie wears. Absolutely. So we've got a lip fungus that's not identified yet. Why am I getting action items for TikTok Live? Welcome to my world, right? Like, and they like troll me the whole time. They're like, 100% of your viewers have not shared this live, and it's like, what do you mean, right? I don't care if they shared the live. I just want them to be able to get this information. Third, we're doing contracts, right? Okay, so we're knowing what we need, right? We're seeing what we're actually going to buy, and then just then we're looking at contracts, right? Rage baiting you. Exactly. They really are, right? So that's it for me today, my friends. I'm happy to have this little impromptu. If you have questions, DM me, direct message me. We can talk, all those different things. And let's see, from my role, I feel horrible for system users and admins that love their current systems that they're forced to consolidate. Yeah, I think that's a hard piece to RIP me being in SaaS sales. There's good people in SaaS sales. Okay, as long as you tell the truth and as long as we're, clear on what we're buying, right? But it's not easy being in SaaS sales right now, pushing AI, everything. You're like, okay, well, what if they don't want that, right? That's the hard part. I have a lot of people that message me and be like, hey, I'm about to take this job with this vendor. What do you think about that? And 9 times out of 10, I'm like, oh yeah, do it, right? Just make sure that you understand like what you're going to be able to need. But all right, I will see you guys next week. DM me with questions. If you have thoughts, feelings on the live, happy to talk about that as well. Oh, and thank you for the 10,000 likes. I always appreciate you guys coming on here and sharing with me, especially when it's impromptu and I just jump on. But that's the point of the channel, is for us to have like these different conversations. So I'll see you guys next week. You have a great weekend. All right. Bye, guys. Thank you. So, what do you do exactly? We drive transformational value through synergistic digital enablement, operating model optimization, stakeholder centric modernization. Yeah, we drive transformational value through synergistic digital enablement, operating model optimization, and stakeholder centric modernization.